The observation pod descended through the atmosphere of the long-abandoned world, its systems carefully monitoring the changing pressure and composition of gases outside. Inside, senior xenobiologist Kernax watched as the blue-green planet grew larger in the viewing panel, a mixture of scientific curiosity and ancestral dread churning within all four of her stomachs. "Atmospheric analysis complete," announced the ship's AI in the melodic tones of the Zithari language. "Oxygen levels at 21%, nitrogen at 78%, with trace gases comprising the remainder. Significantly higher carbon dioxide than historical records indicate, but within parameters for sustained investigation." Kernax adjusted her breathing apparatus, a precautionary measure despite the apparently benign atmosphere. No Zithari had set foot on this world in over 500,000 cycles, not since the retreat. "Visual scan of landing zone," she requested, her outer eyelids blinking rapidly in anticipation. "Clearing as selected, approximately 2 kilometers from the nearest large structure. No signs of technological activity detected. No indication of the dominant species' presence." That last part was both a relief and a disappointment. The Terrans, or humans as they called themselves, had been the reason for the retreat. The reason the Galactic Council had quarantined this entire system and forbidden return until now. 500,000 years, muttered Takalon, the expedition's cultural anthropologist and Kernax's clutchmate since hatching. "Surely they're gone by now. The probability calculations—" "I've seen the same calculations," Kernax interrupted, her dorsal spines rising slightly in irritation. "A species with their level of technological development had a 99.8% probability of extinction within 10,000 years. That still leaves a 0.2% chance they survived." The pod shuddered as it passed through a layer of clouds, and Kernax felt her third heart quicken its pace. Below them, the landscape was coming into focus, vast stretches of green forest, blue waterways, and the unmistakable angular shapes of artificial structures, though most appeared to be in ruins or reclaimed by vegetation. "Landing sequence initiated," the AI announced. "Please secure yourselves for touchdown." The expedition team of 5 Zithari scientists fastened their harnesses. As the most senior member, Kernax had been entrusted with this historic mission, the first return to Earth since their ancestors had fled in terror, leaving behind only automated observation satellites that had long since gone silent. Their mission was simple: determine if the threat was truly gone, and if so, whether Earth could be safely studied or even colonized. The pod settled onto soft ground with a gentle thud. Outside the viewports, tall grass swayed in the breeze. In the distance, the crumbling remains of what might have once been a city rose from the landscape, like the broken teeth of some enormous beast. "Exterior scans register no immediate biological threats," the AI reported. "Local temperature is 22 degrees Celsius, gravity at 1.0 standard. Air quality suitable for limited exposure, though standard protocols for unknown biospheres are recommended." Kernax nodded, her forearms working in perfect coordination as she prepared her equipment. "We'll proceed as planned. Takalon and I will conduct the initial survey. Zivril will monitor from the pod and coordinate with the orbital vessel. Miktor and Selvax will prepare the equipment for sample collection." She paused, looking at each member of her team. "Remember, we're here to observe and analyze. The Terrans may be long gone, but their legacy could still pose unknown dangers. Follow protocols and take no unnecessary risks." As the outer door of the pod cycled open, Kernax felt the first touch of Earth's air, warm, moist and heavy with the sense of life. It had been 500,000 years since any Zithari had breathed this atmosphere, and despite the breathing apparatus covering her lower face, she could detect the rich tapestry of organic compounds. It was both alien and strangely familiar, as if some ancestral memory recognized this world. Takalon stepped out beside her, his scientific scanner already whirring to life in his upper left hand. Extraordinary biodiversity readings, he murmured. The ecosystem appears to have recovered significantly from the damage described in the historical records. Kernax extended her telescoping observation staff, planting it firmly in the soil. The device would collect data on everything from soil microbes to atmospheric particulates, while she conducted her own observations. "Let's proceed toward that structure," she said, indicating what appeared to be the remains of a small building approximately 300 meters away. It was largely reclaimed by vegetation, with vines and small trees growing through what had once been walls and windows, but its artificial nature was unmistakable. As they walked through the high grass, Kernax's training kept her alert for any sign of danger, but her mind was racing with questions. The historical archives contained detailed accounts of the Terrans, a bipedal, mammalian species that had developed technology at an alarming rate. The first Zithari explorers had observed them when they were still using primitive tools and fire. Later expeditions documented their rapid advancement through agricultural, industrial, and early information ages. Then came the final expedition, the one that led to the retreat and the quarantine. The details were classified at the highest level, with only fragmentary information available, even to mission commanders, like Kernax. The records spoke of unexpected capabilities, existential threat assessment, and immediate withdrawal recommended. Whatever the Terrans had done or become, it had frightened the normally methodical and thorough Zithari into abandoning billions of credits worth of research installations and observation posts. Kernax, Takalon's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Look at this." They had reached the ruined structure. What had once been a doorway was now a gaping opening in a crumbling wall. Takalon was pointing at markings on the weathered surface, faded but still visible symbols in what Kernax recognized as one of the Terran writing systems. "Can you decode it?" she asked, her scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming her caution. Takalon hesitated. "Partially. Our linguistic database contains many Terran languages. This appears to be English, one of their most widespread communication forms." His scanner moved across the symbols. "It says, Springfield Public Library, a repository of information," Kernax said, her excitement growing. If any contents survived, this could provide valuable insights into their final days. She stepped carefully through the opening, her eyes adjusting to the dimmer light inside. The roof had partially collapsed, allowing shafts of sunlight to penetrate the interior. What she saw caused her to freeze in place. Shelves, rows upon rows of shelves, and on many of them, despite the obvious damage from time and elements, were books. Physical information storage devices made of processed plant material and colored pigments, primitive by Zithari standards, but remarkably durable compared to many more advanced storage technologies. "Takalon," she called, trying to keep her voice steady. "Bring the preservation equipment." As her colleague hurried back to retrieve the necessary tools, Kernax approached one of the less damaged shelves. With delicate precision, she used her lower right hand to carefully extract what appeared to be a book with a more intact binding than most. The cover was faded, but she could make out colorful illustrations and more of the English symbols. "This is," she began, but stopped as she realized what she was seeing. It was a depiction of creatures resembling Terrans, but with exaggerated features and impossible abilities, flying without technology, emitting energy from their appendages, lifting objects many times their body mass. A children's fantasy tale, she realized. Not unlike the dream stories Zithari parents shared with their hatchlings, the discovery was simultaneously mundane and profound, evidence of cultural parallels between their species. Takalon returned with the preservation equipment, and together they began the careful process of documenting and securing samples from the library. As they worked, Kernax's communicator chimed. "Expedition leader," came Zivral's voice from the pod. "The orbital vessel is detecting unusual energy readings approximately 20 kilometers from your position. It appears to be artificial in origin." Kernax felt her spine stiffen. Specify artificial, she requested, her voice tight. The pattern suggests power generation, Ziveril replied. Consistent, controlled output. The signature doesn't match any known natural phenomena in our database. Takalon looked up from the book he was carefully sealing in a preservation field. That's impossible, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. After 500,000 years, no Terran technology should still be functioning. Kiernak stood motionless, her mind racing through possibilities. A malfunction in the orbital sensors. Some natural phenomenon that mimicked artificial energy patterns, or we need to investigate. She finally decided. Prepare the atmospheric transport, full defensive protocols and remote observation equipment only. No direct contact until we've fully assessed the situation. Is that wise? Takalon asked, his inner eyelids fluttering with concern. The mission parameters specifically caution against engaging with any potentially active Terran technology. The parameters also prioritize determining whether the threat still exists. Kiernax countered. We can't make that assessment without investigating this energy source. She paused, then added more gently. We'll take every precaution, clutchmate. Back at the pod, the team prepared for the short journey to the energy source. The atmospheric transport was essentially a smaller version of their landing pod, equipped with additional sensors and defensive capabilities. As they lifted off, Kiernax reviewed what little the orbital vessel could tell them about their destination. The energy signature is coming from what appears to be a partially subterranean structure, she explained to the team. Satellite imaging shows entrance points and what might be ventilation systems. The surrounding area has less vegetation than we've observed elsewhere, suggesting possible soil composition differences or, she hesitated, ongoing activity that prevents full reclamation by the ecosystem. The transport hummed quietly as it carried them over the landscape. Below, they could see the ruins of what had once been a substantial Terran settlement, roads now broken and overgrown, buildings collapsed or standing as hollow shells, the occasional glint of preserved metal or synthetic materials catching the sunlight. It's remarkable how completely their civilization collapsed, Miktor observed. The technology specialist had been unusually quiet since landing, his natural enthusiasm dampened by the sobering reality of an extinct intelligent species. Our models suggested they would either survive and expand beyond their planet or destroy themselves in some cataclysmic event. This gradual fading away seems unexpected. We don't know that it was gradual, Selvax, the team's biologist, pointed out. The final stages could have been quite rapid. Disease, climate shifts, resource depletion, many factors could have accelerated their extinction once it began. Or they left, Takalon suggested. Advanced enough to journey to other stars, but not advanced enough to maintain their home worlds simultaneously. Approaching the target site, the transport's AI announced, interrupting their speculation. Energy readings are intensifying, detecting complex electromagnetic patterns consistent with active computational systems. The transport settled in a clearing approximately 500 meters from the structure identified as the energy source. From this distance, it was barely visible, a low, angular protrusion from the ground, its original color masked by earth and vegetation. Deploy the observation drones, Kiernax ordered. Full spectrum analysis and cautious approach. If you detect any defensive systems or potential hazards, withdraw immediately. 3 spherical drones detached from the transport's external housing and moved silently toward the structure. The team watched through the shared visual feed as the drones approached, their sensors gathering data and creating a 3-dimensional model of the structure. It appears to be some kind of research facility or secure installation, Miktor said, analyzing the incoming data. Multiple chambers, reinforced walls, dedicated power systems. This was built to last. But not for 500,000 years, Kiernax noted. Nothing the Terrans built should have remained operational for even a fraction of that time without maintenance. The drones reached the structure and began a more detailed scan. One positioned itself near what appeared to be an entrance, a massive door set into the side of the earthen mound that covered much of the facility. Detecting movement, the drone's AI reported suddenly. The visual feed zoomed in on the door, which was showing signs of opening, a seam of light appearing along one edge. "Withdraw the drones," Kianax ordered immediately. Back to maximum safe observation distance. The drones quickly retreated as the door continued to open. The team watched in stunned silence as a figure emerged from the brightening doorway. It was bipedal, upright, with the characteristic body structure of a Terran, though covered in what appeared to be some form of protective suit. The being paused, seeming to survey its surroundings, then turned its head directly toward the location of the nearest drone. "It sees us," Selvax whispered unnecessarily. The figure raised what appeared to be an appendage in a gesture that even across species and time had an unmistakable meaning, a greeting, an acknowledgement of their presence. "This is impossible," Takalon said, his voice shaking. "No Terran could have survived for 500,000 years, unless they found a way to extend their lifespans far beyond our estimates," Miktor suggested, his scientific mind already racing through possibilities. Suspended animation, genetic modification, consciousness transfer to artificial bodies, or they never died out at all, Kianax said quietly. They simply went elsewhere, underground, off-world, into virtual existence. The historical records hinted at technological directions we couldn't fully comprehend. The figure had begun moving toward the drone's position, its gait smooth and purposeful. Now that it was fully in the open, they could see that its protective suit bore markings, symbols and colors that might indicate rank, function, or affiliation. "It's trying to communicate," Zivril noted as the figure made additional gestures. "Should we respond?" Kianax felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her like the gravity of a dense world. The mission parameters were clear about avoiding contact, but they were equally clear about gathering accurate information about the current state of Earth and any potential threats. "Activate the drone's basic communication protocols," she finally decided. "Universal greeting patterns only. No detailed information about us or our mission." The drone emitted a series of lights and sounds designed to convey peaceful intent across species barriers, patterns based on mathematical constants and simple binary sequences that any technologically advanced species should recognize as artificial and deliberate. The figure stopped moving, apparently observing the drone's communication attempt. Then, to the astonishment of the Zithari team, it produced what appeared to be a small device from its suit, and held it up. The device emitted its own pattern of lights, not a random response, but a clear mathematical extension of the sequence the drone had sent. "It understands," Miktor breathed. "Not just that we're trying to communicate, but the actual content of the message. This changes everything," Takalon said. If the Terrans survived and maintained their technological capabilities, he didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone in the transport understood the implications. Before Kianax could give further orders, the drone's sensors detected new movement at the facility entrance. More figures were emerging, different in size and the details of their protective suits, but all unmistakably Terran in form. Within moments, 7 of them stood in a loose semicircle, watching the drone. "We need to report this to the orbital vessel immediately," Selvax urged. "The Council must be informed that the quarantine has failed. The Terrans still exist." "Not yet," Kernax countered. "We don't have enough information. We don't know if these are truly Terrans as they existed in the historical records, or something else, descendants so modified they share only a superficial resemblance, artificial constructs, or even a completely different species that adopted similar forms." "What are you suggesting?" Takalon asked, though his posture suggested he already knew and feared the answer. Direct contact, Kernax said firmly. Controlled, prepared, and with full defensive measures in place. But I will go alone first to assess the situation. Protests erupted from the entire team, but Kernax raised all 4 of her arms for silence. This is not open for debate. As mission commander, I am exercising emergency protocol authority. The potential knowledge to be gained outweighs the personal risk. She turned to Miktor. Prepare the personal defense field and the universal translator. I'll approach on foot to appear less threatening. The transport will remain at ready status with weapons charged but not targeted. If I give the emergency signal, or if communication is lost, you are to withdraw immediately to orbit and report to the Council. The preparations were made in tense silence. As Kernax donned the additional equipment, she felt a complex mixture of emotions, scientific excitement, ancestral fear, and a deep sense of responsibility. Whatever had caused the retreat had been terrible enough to force their ancestors to abandon years of research and implement a quarantine that had lasted 500,000 years. And now she was willingly walking toward what might be the same threat. The translator may not work effectively, Miktor warned as he helped adjust the device. It's programmed with all known Terran languages from the historical records, but after so much time, I understand, Kernax assured him. I'll rely on universal concepts if verbal communication fails. She stepped out of the transport, feeling the soft earth beneath her feet and the gentle breeze against her exposed scales. The defense field was invisible, but comforting, capable of stopping any known Terran weapon from the time before the retreat. The walk to the facility seemed both endless and too short. The Terran figures remained where they were, watching her approach, occasionally communicating with each other through gestures or devices. As she drew closer, she could see more details of their protective suits, not the bulky constructions depicted in historical images, but sleek, form-fitting garments that suggested advanced materials and design. When she was approximately 20 meters away, the central figure, the first one they had seen, raised both of its upper appendages in what her cultural database identified as a universal Terran gesture of peaceful intent, showing empty hands. Kernax stopped and mirrored the gesture with her own upper arms, keeping her lower arms relaxed at her sides. Then, activating the translator, she spoke the careful greeting her team had prepared. I am Kernax of the Zithari. We come in peace to observe and learn. We mean no harm to your world or your kind. The translator converted her words into multiple historical Terran languages simultaneously, broadcasting them at a volume calculated to reach the figures clearly. For a moment, there was no response. Then the central figure reached up and did something unexpected. It removed the head covering of its protective suit. The face revealed was unmistakably Terran, but with subtle differences from the historical images. The skin tone was more uniform, the facial features more symmetrical, and the eyes seemed to hold a depth and awareness that sent a shiver through Kernax's spine. The being spoke, its voice clear and surprisingly melodic. To Kernax's astonishment, the translator provided an immediate interpretation. The language was recognizably derived from historical English, though with significant evolution in structure and pronunciation. Welcome back to Earth, Zithari visitor. We have been expecting your return for some time. Kernax felt all 3 of her hearts skip simultaneously. You knew we would come back. The Terran's mouth formed what the cultural database identified as a smile, a facial expression indicating pleasure, amusement, or satisfaction. We calculated a 94.3% probability of a return expedition within the first 1,000,000 years after your departure. Your arrival is actually 42,317 years earlier than our median projection. Kernax struggled to process the implications. You know of our previous expeditions, of the retreat. The Terran nodded, Another familiar gesture. We have extensive records of your people's observations of Earth and its premature withdrawal when humanity began to achieve technological singularity. The other Terrans had now removed their head coverings as well, revealing faces with similar characteristics, a uniformity that suggested genetic manipulation or selection over many generations. I don't understand, Kernax admitted. Our records indicate that your species should have either destroyed itself or evolved beyond recognition by now. How have you maintained both your physical form and technological civilization for 500,000 years? The Terran gestured toward the facility behind them. Perhaps it would be easier to show you. Would you and your team care to join us inside? I assure you, no harm will come to you. If we had wished you ill, we could have prevented your landing. The casual assertion sent another shiver through Kernax. She activated her direct communication link to the transport. Did you hear that? We heard Taklan's voice came back, tense with concern. Kernax, this is extremely dangerous. They've just admitted to having the capability to interfere with our technology. Or they're bluffing, she countered. Either way, this is exactly the kind of information we were sent to gather. She considered for a moment, then continued, Miktor and Taklan will join me. Selvax and Zivril will remain with the transport as backup and to maintain communication with the orbital vessel. Turning back to the Terran, she said, 3 of us will accept your invitation, with the understanding that we remain in contact with our vessel at all times. The Terran nodded again. Of course, my name is Elian. I serve as a historical interface specialist for encounters with pre-singularity species. Please, follow me when your colleagues arrive. While waiting for Miktor and Taklan to join her, Kernax observed the other Terrans. They seemed remarkably at ease, showing none of the anxiety or defensive posturing that might be expected in an encounter with an alien species. Either they were extremely confident in their security, or they had extensive experience with interspecies contact. When her teammates arrived, visibly nervous despite their scientific training, Elian led the group toward the facility entrance. As they approached, the massive door opened fully, revealing a brightly lit corridor that sloped gently downward into the earth. This is one of our historical preservation facilities, Elian explained as they walked. There are several thousand similar installations around what you would recognize as Earth, maintaining records and artifacts from throughout human history. The corridor opened into a large chamber filled with display cases, holographic projections, and interactive terminals. The technology was far more advanced than anything in the historical records of Terran civilization, yet it had a strangely organic quality, as if it had grown rather than been constructed. 500,000 years ago, Elian continued, humanity was approaching a critical threshold, what we call the technological singularity. Our development of artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and consciousness mapping was accelerating at an exponential rate. Your ancestors observed this process and recognized correctly that it represented a potential threat to other species. One of the display cases lit up as they passed, showing what appeared to be primitive Terran computational devices alongside increasingly sophisticated iterations, culminating in a small crystalline structure that pulsed with inner light. The Zithari Council made the decision to withdraw from Earth and establish a quarantine, Elian said. It was a prudent choice given the information available to them. What they couldn't know was the path humanity would ultimately take. They reached a circular chamber at the center of the facility. The walls were lined with what appeared to be viewing portals, though instead of showing the outside world, they displayed diverse landscapes, celestial vistas, and strange geometrical spaces that seemed to defy conventional physics. When we achieved singularity, Elian explained, we faced a choice. We could expand outward, colonizing the galaxy with our physical forms, or we could expand inward, exploring the virtually limitless potential of digitized consciousness and manufactured realities. We chose the latter. Mictor, who had been scanning everything with barely concealed fascination, finally spoke. You abandoned physical existence. Elian smiled. Not abandoned, transcended. The beings you see before you are physical instantiations of consciousness that primarily exists in a substrate beyond conventional space-time. We maintain biological forms for interaction with the physical world when necessary, but most of humanity exists in a state you might think of as post-physical. How many of you are there? Taklon asked, his scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming his apprehension. Currently, approximately 1 trillion unique consciousnesses, Elian replied casually. Though that number is somewhat meaningless, as we can merge, divide and exist in superposition states that defy traditional counting. Kernax felt her respiratory system constricting with the implications. 1 trillion. The historical records estimated peak Terran population at merely billions. Physical limitations no longer constrain our population growth, Elian explained. Computational substrate can be expanded virtually indefinitely, and consciousness can be optimized for efficiency, without loss of complexity. And yet you remain here, Kernax observed, on Earth. Why not transfer your entire civilization to artificial structures in space, or to other star systems? Elian gestured to the chamber around them. Earth is our home, our origin point. We maintain it as both a historical preserve and a connection to our biological roots. We have expanded elsewhere throughout the solar system and beyond, but Earth remains special to us. One of the viewing portals shifted to show what appeared to be the surface of another planet, red and dusty, but dotted with gleaming structures that pulsed with the same strange organic technology they had seen in the facility. Mars, Elian identified it. One of our first expansion points, now home to several billion instantiated consciousnesses and a major computational hub. Another portal showed what appeared to be a massive structure orbiting a distant star, a sphere of interlocking components surrounding the stellar body, almost completely. A Dyson swarm around Tau Ceti, Elian explained. One of 17 similar energy collection systems we've constructed in neighboring star systems. Kernax exchanged glances with her teammates. The implications were staggering. If the Terrans, or whatever they had become, had this level of technology and expansion 500,000 years ago, what might their current capabilities be? Why have you remained isolated? She asked. With your level of technology, you could have expanded throughout the galaxy by now. You could have encountered and communicated with countless other species, including our own. Elian's expression became more serious. That was a deliberate choice. When we achieved singularity, we gained access to levels of understanding that made certain truths apparent. One of these was the profound vulnerability of emerging technological civilizations. Had we expanded aggressively and contacted other species during their developmental phases, we would have inevitably disrupted their natural evolution, possibly even caused their extinction through the mere knowledge of our existence. The prime directive, Mictor murmured, then looked embarrassed when everyone turned to him. A concept from Terran fiction, the idea that advanced civilizations should not interfere with developing ones. Elian smiled. Precisely, we chose a policy of non-interference, allowing other species to develop at their own pace and make their own choices about transcendence. We've observed many civilizations from afar, including the continued evolution of the Zithari over the past 500,000 years. You've been watching us, Takalon asked, his spines rising in alarm. Passively, Elian assured him. We maintain observation capabilities throughout much of the galaxy, but we do not interfere unless absolutely necessary to prevent extinction-level events. Kernax's scientific mind was racing to process everything she was learning, but a deeper question kept surfacing. You said earlier that you were expecting our return. Why? Elian moved to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display activated, showing what appeared to be a three-dimensional model of galactic development over time. Various points of light represented different species and their technological progression. The galaxy is entering a new phase, Elian explained. More species are achieving the technological threshold necessary for interstellar communication and travel. The old isolationist policies are becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. We've been preparing for a more open relationship with other advanced civilizations, including the Zithari. The hologram zoomed in on a particular section of the galaxy, highlighting what Kernax recognized as Zithari-controlled space, approximately 120 star systems spanning what Terrans would have called the Orion Arm. Your civilization has developed remarkably stably, Elian continued. Unlike many species, you avoided the self-destructive phases common to technological development. Your cautious, methodical approach to expansion and your emphasis on observation before action has resulted in one of the most sustainable civilizations we've observed. The unexpected praise caught Kernax off guard. You approve of our development. We don't judge, Elian corrected gently. Each species finds its own path. But yes, we've noted the Zithari approach as particularly likely to result in long-term survival and flourishing. Another of the Terrans stepped forward, a slightly smaller figure with darker skin coloration. What Elian is attempting to explain, this new Terran said, is that we believe the time has come for more direct communication between our civilizations. Your return to Earth provides an opportunity to establish that connection. Elian nodded. This is Mira, our strategic interaction specialist. She has been modeling potential outcomes of contact between our species for several thousand years. Mira inclined her head in what Kernax recognized as a gesture of respect. The galactic community is about to undergo significant changes. Several species are approaching singularity thresholds simultaneously, an unusual convergence that could lead to either unprecedented cooperation or devastating conflicts. The Zithari Council needs to be made aware of these developments, Elian added. Your position as observers has given you unique insights into many developing civilizations. That perspective will be invaluable in the coming transition. Kernax felt overwhelmed by the scale of what was being discussed. Her mission had been simple: determine if Earth was safe to study again after 500,000 years. Instead, she was being drawn into what appeared to be galactic-level politics involving multiple species and civilization-altering technologies. I'm not authorized to establish formal diplomatic relations, she said carefully. My team was sent only to assess the current state of Earth and any potential threats. Of course, Elian acknowledged. We're not asking for formal agreements at this stage, but we would like to send a representative back with you to open a dialogue with your council, to share information about developments in the galaxy that your observation network may not have detected. Taklon stepped closer to Kernax, lowering his voice. Kernax, we need to discuss this privately. The implications are far beyond our mission parameters. She nodded slightly, then addressed the Terrans. Would you allow us a moment to confer among ourselves? Certainly, Elian agreed. We understand this is unexpected. Please take whatever time you need. The three Zithari moved to a corner of the chamber, activating a privacy field that would prevent sound from carrying to the Terrans' biological ears, though Kernax harbored no illusions that beings of their advanced technology couldn't monitor their conversation if they wished. This is unprecedented, Taklon began without preamble. The Council needs to be informed immediately. These beings are far beyond anything our historical records suggested was possible. Their technology is miraculous, Mikor added, his eyes darting to the various displays around the chamber. Post-singularity development sustained for 500,000 years, the scientific knowledge alone would revolutionize our understanding of physics, consciousness, computation, and potentially destabilize our entire civilization if introduced too quickly. Kernax cautioned, "Remember why the quarantine was established. Our ancestors recognized that Terran technological development represented an existential threat, but they've had 500,000 years to expand throughout the galaxy, to conquer or destroy other civilizations, and they haven't," Taklon pointed out. "Instead, they've apparently been watching and waiting, deliberately avoiding interference. So they claim," Kernax countered. "We have only their word for their intentions and actions." Mikor's eyes widened. "You think they're lying? To what end? If they wished us harm, they could simply have destroyed our vessel before we ever landed." Kernax's spines flattened in a gesture of uncertainty. Not lying, perhaps, but potentially presenting information selectively. This talk of galactic community and converging singularities, it suggests they want something from us. The question is what? Perhaps exactly what they've stated, Taklon suggested. An open dialogue with the Council, preparation for some kind of broader interspecies communication network. Or they've detected some threat that concerns even them, Mikor hypothesized, something that requires cooperation from multiple advanced species. Kernax considered both possibilities. Either would represent a fundamental shift in Zithari interaction with other civilizations. For millennia, they had been observers, catalogers, scientists studying the galaxy's diverse life forms from a cautious distance. The idea of joining a galactic community was foreign to their cultural mindset.